Well, thank you very much. It's great to see you all this morning. And if we can go to the next slide, please. And after this one, great. So just right up front, I just wanted to explain that Emyria, we're a biotech company developing innovative treatments for mental health and neuroscience. And just wanted to flag that just a few weeks ago, our opportunity horizon changed dramatically when the TGA announced that MDMA and psilocybin will be rescheduled to controlled medicines as of July 1st. Emyria has been working with our partners to help trial MDMA-assisted therapy. We've also been developing novel drugs inspired by MDMA itself. And this change opens up a pathway to registration and reimbursement that for us is incredibly exciting. And I hope to tell you a little bit more about that later. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, Emyria is focused on developing innovative treatments. We're leveraging cannabinoids and MDMA to tackle major unmet needs in neuroscience and mental health. We've got some really unique comparative advantages in that we actually operate our own clinical services. So we are at the front line caring for patients, but also learning from those patients as we provide that care. And that data that we gather, that real world evidence, supports our drug development programs. We've also managed to attract the support and investment from 10 Mile, that's Tatarang's healthcare focused investment fund. And we've got some tremendous progress on our leading programs. Next slide, please. So one of the key things is that we are operating a clinical service. That means we actually manage our own facilities, we hire our own doctors, and we've actually treated through Emerald Clinics, our cannabinoid-focused medical service, more than 8,000 patients to date. That's meant that we've been able to generate incredible insights on how cannabinoids are working for those patients, and we're using those insights to develop novel dose forms and new drugs for major unmet needs and taking those through registration. We've got 2 leading cannabinoid programs already, the RX5, which is already at phase 3 trials and pursuing an over-the-counter registration. We have a number of prescription strength dose forms in development as well. And then layering into this service now in this new horizon is an opportunity to facilitate the establishment of a network of clinicians and psychiatrists, specialists to support MDMA-assisted therapy as of July 1st. And again, repeat that process, gather incredible real-world evidence that can support the generation of novel MDMA analogs, a program we've been working on for a while, and also improve the delivery of MDMA treatment for these major unmet needs. Next slide, please. So why is real-world data so important? Well, we believe it can actually accelerate the registration of novel treatments by providing key insights on what dose forms are working for which particular clinical problems in which patient subgroups. Most of the times in a clinical trial, you're making this bet somewhat blind, but having a clinical service focused on treating patients with unmet needs with novel unregistered treatments, we can get those insights of where these treatments are working sooner, and we can use that data to de-risk and make smarter choices about our trial design and ultimately our registration goals. Next slide, please. We have a terrific team that's done this before. A couple of notable inclusions on our board. Sir John Tuke, knighted for services to medicine, based in London, the Dean of the First Medical School at UCL, a global advisor to Google DeepMind in the early days, and terrific expert on learning health systems. Also, Dr. Karen Smith, a US-based bioexecutive who has been on the board of Jazz Pharmaceuticals, a really notable player in the cannabinoid space, having acquired GW Pharma for over $7 billion, the only registered CBD medicine in the world to date. Next slide, please. And next slide after this. So we're tackling cannabinoids as one of our first programs. Why? Because there's only one registered drug in the world today. It's generating over $1 billion of sales. It's that drug that was the company that was bought by Jazz Pharmaceuticals. And despite its great revenues, it's really limited to only a small number of indications, despite the interest in CBD being much broader than just this single indication. Next slide, please. But the trouble with a lot of cannabinoid products is that they've got these huge limitations. One, the bioavailability is terrible. Most of the drugs are me-too products, and the potency of these drugs is often highly variable. Next slide, please. Which is why we spent so long focusing on developing a synthetic, this is a lab-created cannabinoid product with some superior features over the incumbents. Next slide, please. So this is a detailed slide. I encourage you to sort of download the presentation, which is now posted on the platform. But I want to call out a couple of things here that we're using an ultra pure CBD. This is made in the lab. We don't touch the plant. It works exactly the same as the plant-based molecule, but we can reliably ensure its purity. We can generate this product for lower cost, and ultimately it actually has less environmental impact to produce a kilo of our cannabinoid product compared to the alternatives. But most importantly, we can formulate this in a unique way that gives us an IP protection and actually has some clinical delivery advantages. Next slide, please. And then we're applying that tech in our first product, next slide, to EMD RX5, and we're pursuing an over-the-counter registration for a major unmet need, that is anxiety and stress in patients with chronic disease, particularly those with chronic pain. This insight came to us from a study of our data. We saw an opportunity for a low-dose cannabinoid solution here, and we are the only company pursuing this indication with our unique synthetic cannabinoid treatment. Next slide, please. And so we've done a head-to-head study. We've seen some advantages in our bioavailability over that Epidiolex product. We have less variability, great tolerability, and now that drug is already in phase 3 trials, and we're due to conclude those in July this year with a data readout by the last half of the year. And then ultimately that will support a TGA submission. We hope to be one of the first, if not the first, registered, approved drugs on the market available to patients from their pharmacies. Next dose, please. Next slide, sorry. Then the next growth opportunity for this product, because we've made it in such a pure way, we can now take this drug to registration in other global markets, but also use our data to support it in other indications. Next slide, please. Then following behind that is a prescription strength program where we're developing very high dose CBD and taking that into other major unmet needs globally as well. Again, guided by our data. Next slide, please. This is a key pipeline. We'll go to the next slide. Thank you. Great. And the one after this. So what we're working on now is MDMA assisted therapy. So MDMA, you might have heard of it, it was otherwise known as ecstasy. It was an illegal drug and has remained so until the really an incredible announcement from the TJ earlier this month to recognize MDMA has therapeutic potential when given alongside therapy for major unmet needs, particularly post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is a condition that has a huge financial cost, massive burden on the health system. In Australia alone, there's probably 500,000 patients have unmet treatment-resistant PTSD, and they're the patients that we believe we can make a big difference for. If you go to the next slide, please, because some of the early research using MDMA alongside therapy have shown you can have tremendous clinical benefits for patients with really difficult to treat PTSD. After just 3 intense sessions with a therapist sitting beside a patient for 8 to 12 hours while they take MDMA, these patients, after 3 sessions, 2/3 of them basically no longer met the clinical criteria for having PTSD, which is a remarkable clinical outcome for a disease that has been historically so difficult to manage. And that's why there's so much excitement and interest in how we can get these treatments out to patients who need them. So next slide, please. But there remains a massive challenge, and that is that delivering these drugs requires specialist training, data monitoring. It's a combination of unique skills that is difficult to provide. Next slide, please. So Emyria has 2 incredible opportunities. The first one is to leverage all of our learnings with the cannabinoid space through controlled drug supply, working with specialist partners, working with therapists, and providing all of that skill and support to allow this treatment to happen for patients after July 1st. We believe this can help us generate revenues through those supporting those activities, but also most importantly, really important clinical data to support our drug development. If you go to the next slide, the second major opportunity here is to take that data and support the improvement of MDMA molecule itself to tackle other psychedelic assisted therapy opportunities and also other major neurological disorders. This is a molecule we've been working with for over a couple of years with the University of Western Australia. We have over 140 unique variations of this, and some of those look really promising as next generation MDMA, faster acting MDMA that is, and also treatments for other neurological conditions as well. So we go to the next slide, please. And the one after that. And probably to the next one, because I know I'm getting up to 10 minutes. So we've already shown proof of concept that we can make a faster acting MDMA, and this is inspiring the creation of novel analogs. And if you go to the next 2 slides, I'll summarize here to say that we're a really interesting company with tremendous opportunity horizon. We've got an ultra pure CBD dose form that's novel. It's in phase 3 trials, and it's close to commercialization. a clinical activity service that's very active treating patients and generating real-world data. Incredible opportunity to lead the space in the MDMA-assisted therapy and help address some major unmet needs, but also develop new novel drugs with huge potential for unmet needs also. And all of this pulled together by a really good team who's done this kind of thing before, and also, of course, the great investment support from groups like 10 Mile. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. I must say that's a very impressive board. Can we start with just the business? You've got effectively, correct me if I'm wrong, the drug development, but you're also moving into the clinics for the therapy. Why move into the clinics while you're also managing the drug development?
Yeah, that's a great question. We started with clinics first with cannabinoids because we recognized there was two challenges to fix there when cannabinoids were rescheduled in 2016. That was provide a safe environment for patients to access these treatments, but also, most importantly, learn where these treatments are most effective. None of the evidence behind how to use them was generated at that point, and we felt we needed to collect that data to support registration, which ultimately could lead to greater patient access for specific patient groups. MDMA has the same challenge. Here is a treatment that's now been made available, essentially through an authorized prescriber pathway, but we still are left with a paucity of evidence around how to best use this treatment, how to do it safely, how to deliver it. And we've got the skills and competency to support this work. And so we feel we're uniquely equipped to help deliver MDMA therapy to patients who need it, but also, importantly, collect really key clinical information to further improve its delivery, and also lead to insights that can help with new drug discovery and development as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you also touched on that in the CBD market, there's only $1 billion drug, or only one drug. Is there a wave of drugs coming, and why has it taken so long for just one drug to get to market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's a really pioneering drug. They took a very strict pharmaceutical approach. They've been at it for more than 20 years by the time they end up getting to registration. And I think, with the change of laws here, we had a huge surge of enthusiasm. Lots and lots of people made copycat products and tried to get those out into the market. And I think now they've all run into each other and realized that the real way to make value here is to actually do the hard work, invest in clinical research, as we predicted, and actually achieve registration, which requires meeting a really high bar for clinical efficacy with major regulators. But once you've done that work, once you've made that investment, then the reimbursement can open up, prescription is much easier, and therefore your commercial returns can be greater. So I think it took a little while for the industry to kind of realize the importance of doing that hard work, and I feel like we're at the front line because we went ahead and got that data, and now we've got that really strict biopharmaceutical drug development expertise supporting the program.
And there's a question here in recent news regarding the first dosing of your ultra pure CBD capsules in its phase 3 clinical trial. Now, several companies have been unable to kind of, in this phase 3, get beyond the placebo effect, or unable to beat the placebo effect. How are you going to work around that sort of notion?
Yeah, placebo is always a challenge. It's the major risk that all drug developers face in those placebo-controlled gold standard clinical trials that regulators insist on. We're no different. However, we're the only company targeting symptoms of anxiety and stress in a patient group with chronic pain. Every other competitor that's announced an interest in this space are going for sleep disturbance. We think that has some additional placebo challenges. We're also the only drug that has a unique synthetic sort of controlled dose form with a known bioavailability. And we're going to the highest dose possible, 150 milligrams in those studies as well. So we feel like we've got a little bit of an edge there in terms of, and also all of those decisions guided by the real world data that we've collected on hundreds of patients who have been taking CBD through across our clinics as well. So I think we're going for a unique target, and I think that will help us get across the line.
And that MDMA data on PTSD was quite remarkable. I think it was 67% kind of cure away from that PTSD. Were you surprised by kind of the approval of MDMA in the US?
Well, in the US, it hasn't been approved yet, but that data is one of two. They've now finished 2 phase 3s. We haven't seen the data from the second one, but we've been told publicly that it met all of the endpoints and basically reiterated those great outcomes. So now that data can be submitted to the FDA, and likely MDMA will be one of the first registered psychedelic compounds in early 2024, again, creating a surge of interest in that compound. But that kind of data is the evidence the TGA was considering to reschedule the drug. And so what they did, through their scheduling from 9 to 8, is recognize that the MDMA has therapeutic potential when given alongside therapy, and therefore they moved to create a pathway for access to patients, albeit a challenging one, but one that we feel we can navigate and really help a lot of patients with.
Yeah, TGA, with apologies, not the US. Is the US slower to adopt these sort of drugs, given the kind of connotations in the past?
I would normally bet the other way around. I thought the TGA would be far more conservative, but they've been, really well educated on the space, been following the science for the last couple of years, and they're the first regulator in the world to make this kind of recognition, which is pretty remarkable. So I think the FDA is also going to move under the, they're going to be persuaded by the evidence that's coming for them. People are doing, really high quality, large trials for this therapy. Then unmet need is enormous. So there's also a willingness to kind of work and bring new therapies to patients who really need them. So I feel like this is just the beginning of a wave of new treatment modalities in mental health, which is long overdue and really welcome in the sector.
And what are sort of the milestones for 2023 for, potential new investors, existing shareholders?
Yeah, so on the cannabinoid front, conclusion of our phase 3 commercial partner submission to TGA, prescription drugs coming alongside behind those as well. These are high dose drugs that will be going for US registration efforts as well. And then on the MDMA front, activation of the network, starting to treat patients after July 1st, as soon as we've got all the components together, and also the key readouts from our preclinical program on that MDMA analogs and selection of lead compounds from that library.
Michael, thanks for your time. We'll follow with interest.
Appreciate it.